Welcome to the talk of today, PandasAI Unpacked, your gateway to effortless data analysis. And this is an event we have been preparing for a very long while, so I'm very excited that we have it finally today. As usual, the call is being recorded at the moment, and I see I need to admit few people who are trying to enter. Admit all. So you don't have the possibility to unmute or enable your video, but you are absolutely welcome to use the Q&A or the chat feature. And at the end, we will upload the recording to our YouTube channel where you can revisit this call if you have missed something. This time for the first time, we have a call with over 1,000 participants, 1,000 members in the community. So we definitely need to celebrate this. And it has been an absolute impressive journey. And well, without the community, without this great community, it would not have been possible. So this is something we all deserve. It is at the moment around about 1 year old, the community, so still pretty fresh. And we use both Meetup for announcing all our events, both the community calls, a place to connect with other experts or the expert talks like we are today. And we also have our LinkedIn page where we replicate the events, but also add announcement and news, etc. Some of the most active members you can see in the right side of the screen. I'm checking now if there is someone from the team who is there in the call, and I see at least one person, so I will enable them to say hello. So we have Miguel Cienfuegos. I think Miguel is not there today, or I don't see him at the moment. We have myself. My name is Carlos Hernandez Vaquero. I work as software development manager, leading the data-centric software team in Bosch. We have also Gert. I see you should be able to say hello, I hope.
Yeah, hi, hello.
And we have also, and I see, by the way, your subtitle is wrong, I assume, right? But okay, we will need to correct that. And we have also Rashmi, data scientist, who I think is not there at the moment. All right. What other tools we use? As we mentioned, the YouTube channel where all the recordings land, the website, which has the links to everything else. We also have the Discord server and GitHub repos, especially the Discord server we use intensively for discussions. And something I want to show you is what has happened in the last days is last week we had the call with the researcher from Meta AI talking about Llama 3 and many other things, actually very, very interesting. And we still have, since few weeks, we have running the project incubator with several projects running. And I think the talk of today will be very interesting for them also to get inspiration about how an idea becomes startup and furthermore. What is upcoming is in a couple of weeks, the community call. Great place to connect with other people, to say hello to the world and share what you are passionate about. And there will be also a section to discuss about the projects in the project incubator. And at the end of June, we will have, I think, a very interesting talk about legality and generative AI. So what do we need to consider in those terms about legality when we use this technology? So we have a few lawyers from a recognized law firm from Silicon Valley to tell us about that. And this is very new. Beginning of July, we will have a very interesting talk about the future, midterm, long term, depends on how you look at that. So AI taking over everything and how would that evolve? So there's many theories, and we will hear one of them, which is, I think, for me at least, very, very interesting. The topic of today, or the speaker of today, is Gabriele Venturi. He is the founder and CEO of PandasAI and software engineer with experience in several startups across Europe, serial founder, always related to many different side projects, small startups, etc. Always hustling, working on new projects and learning new things. And with this, Gabriele, the stage is yours.
Yeah. Hi everyone. It's a pleasure being here. Yeah. So as Carlos was mentioning, I'm the author, or original author of PandasAI. I don't know. Does any one of you know PandasAI? I don't know if you can chat or answer, or we can make it more interactive. Or don't be shy. Okay, so basically, I will share some slides in a second. So we can probably have a session where I don't want it to be boring at all. So I just will ask a couple of questions before we start, if you don't mind, so I can change the talk accordingly. So, for example, is any of you technical, for example, and do you guys have experience with guys and girls have experiences with startups? I don't know. Tell me something about yourself. I just very curious, yeah, to learn more. It's kind of weird when you want to break the ice and you are in front of a camera. But I don't know. I would like to feel like we are together in the same room. So do you are you technical? Do you are you familiar with software, or anyone
And
technical? Raise your hands.
I think it's also hard because people only have the chat, but if we give them a few seconds,
Yeah.
they maybe
No.
write something.
It's just that a little bit trying to make it more dynamic. Anyways, so for the ones not familiar with PandasAI, PandasAI is a library that is very focused on one specific use case, which is the conversational data analysis. So many of you might be familiar, in particular if you are technical, might be familiar with LangChain. LangChain is very generic, so you can build pretty much every Gen AI app with LangChain. What we decided to focus on with PandasAI is specifically data analysis, in particular for unstructured, in particular for structured data, but we are also adding the support for unstructured data as well. So with PandasAI, what you can do is in one line of code, pretty much ask a question in natural language about your data and get the answer right away. Basically, here is how it works. You can connect any data source. It can be SQL, Databricks, it can be Google BigQuery, a CSV. It can be literally any kind of data source. And then you just share a query in natural language. And then it does several steps of analysis. And the first thing it does is it generates a SQL code or a SQL query, or a Python code, or a combination of the two. And then it will parse the code in search of errors and hallucinations and try to get rid of those. And then finally execute the code being generated in a sandbox environment so that it's safe. And in return, you get either an output that can be, for example, a chart, or it can be a number, or it can be a natural language answer, or it can be a table. So I will make a couple of examples. Imagine you want to explore what are your, top 5 countries by revenue, and PandasAI will do the analysis for you. So you just provide, the related data sets, and then you will get the answer in the form of a table in this case. Same thing if you ask for, age groups by, how much they spend in your online store. So it can really work in several different use cases. In some other cases, we might want to visualize data, so we can ask to plot a chart or visualize the revenue by country, and this is what you get as an output. In fact, PandasAI doesn't only work with Pandas, which is a pretty well-known library in the Python ecosystem. It's probably one of the most famous ones, but it leverages the whole ecosystem. So you can use for example, libraries like Matplotlib to plot, or you can use a scikit-learn to do some forecasting or some basic models starting from your data, and so on and so forth. Here you can see other kind of applications like where it returns a number as an output, usually aggregated numbers. And in some cases, we can do more advanced analysis that require more advanced reasoning to get to a final conclusion. So in this case, imagine you are working with a company and you have noticed that you have like a higher than average churn, and you want to explore why the churn is increasing. And so you might ask, why is the churn increasing? And what PandasAI should do, and this is something that we are releasing soon, it will actually reason as a real data analyst and try to come up with several experiments to figure out what are the features in your datasets that are more related to your churn. So why is the churn increasing? And this is something that will be available soon on PandasAI, just to also show what's the vision with that. Of course, it works with different type of data analysis. In particular, we started with the descriptive one, which is just about observation. So, given your data, here are what you can, see out of your data. You can get, average mode. You can get, grouped, grouped analysis and similar. And this is the most naive type of analysis that you can do with Python or SQL. But for example, you can also do diagnostic analysis. So for example, you can ask, why is the churn increasing? And so you will also try to explain with correlations or similar why the churn is actually increasing. So it might be that you have increased your pricing, and so you have like a higher churn. So this is what you can get already partially. And then the same thing with the predictive. So for example, given your past revenue, you can ask a question about, what will be the revenue in the next 3 months? This is also something that can be done. And then in the long run, and this is the long run vision, prescriptive analysis. By prescriptive analysis, we means, okay, this is the data, this is the observations that we have done so far. This is what you should do to, increase your revenue or decrease your churn, depending on the kind of prescription that you ask for. So you will do all the other kind of analysis, combine them, and reason on the top of what can be observed by the numbers to finally come up with a strategy for your company. And this is exactly where we are heading. Of course, it's not very easy because it has to consider so many things and it has to learn so many things, but that's exactly where the library is heading in the long run. Moving on, PandasAI can learn. In fact, what you can do is you can train PandasAI to learn specific topics. So it can either learn information from your company. So imagine you have your UK company, and your fiscal year ends in April instead of ending at the end of December. And when you will ask a question about the fiscal year, what you will get is an assumption that your fiscal year ends on December, because that's what happens on the average company. So you can teach PandasAI that your fiscal year actually starts in April, and then from that moment, it will learn this information, and it will be able to use it accordingly whenever a question about this is asked. In the same way, you can teach specific processes. So imagine you want to teach a specific Q&A. Imagine there are several ways to calculate the churn. For example, I know I stick very much to this churn example, but this is something that is happening very frequently with PandasAI users. So there are different processes to calculate the churn, and you want to teach PandasAI the one process that in your company is the right one, because every single process is right, but you want PandasAI to be deterministic in the output. And that's what train is meant to.
So it seems we have a problem with the connection. Let's wait for a minute. I hope, Gad, you can still hear me. And it's only Gabriele, or am I also out? It looks some people are giving thumbs up. Thanks for that. I already have a lot of questions for Gabriele. I don't know about you. I was not sure if I should interrupt. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And maybe when he comes back, we restart in that way. I hope he recognized that he's not audible. Otherwise, he's maybe talking and talking and his network is, I don't know, off. Oh, I see someone trying to join who is called Gabriele. This looks good. So Gabriele, give me a second. I will make you presenter. You should be able to unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
We still see your previous screen. I mean, you are now 2 times in the call. It's some kind of, yeah, this is funny. Can you share again the screen?
Okay, it's an injection. Yeah, I will try. Yeah, I think it's probably Microsoft Teams that is, for some reason, is crashing, but let me try. It hates me. It happens all the time. Anyways, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, basically, I think we were almost done with the technical aspects, let's say. But basically, one point that I wanted to share is not just about PandasAI, but I think about, I mean, this is a group about generative AI, and I think it's important to share this point of view. In fact, everyone is excited about the generative part of the generative AI, but I think indeed we should really focus on the other part, which is the fact that for the first time in our, in this history of humans, we have seen a system that is able to understanding. It's so the most exciting part about generative AI is indeed, in my opinion, the reading and the understanding and reasoning capabilities of the large language models. And we should really focus more on those aspects, because those are hidden unlimited potential. If you think about it, there's literally, they can understand queries better than a human can sometimes. And this is exactly what the kind of thing that we're trying to leverage at PandasAI, but it's just one of the most naive use cases. There are way more complex use cases that can be built with PandasAI and with generative AI. So yeah, that's what's next. I've already expressed pretty much. So it's what we are trying to do is creating a business copilot at the end of the day. So we really want to share insight with the decision makers about how to run a business that is data driven and not based on the gut feeling. Like unfortunately, we have seen probably too much in the past. And so yeah, that's the mission. Now, talking about, I think, Carlos, you have mentioned to some extent that we are now turning this into a business, not the open source itself, but like we are also building a business on top of PandasAI. And I don't know, sorry for asking questions again, but like, are any of you interested into, entrepreneurial path, or, you are exploring the generative AI for its potential, of disrupting some kind of industries? Is anyone here that is interested into that? because I think, yeah, I might share my background and my story a little bit if you want.
So you mean the business side and not just the technology, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I think it's a conjunction at the end of the day, So it's what I've always been passionate about, merging the technology and turning it into a business that solves real problems. So yeah, so that's I think it's a very good intersection in between the business and the technology, and that's exactly what I tried to to build with PandasAI and with my past experiences. So yeah, I guess if you want, I can share a little bit of my story from the early days of PandasAI until getting into Y Combinator. Hoping it might be helpful for some of you. Do you want me to talk about it right now, or you prefer to have like a small Q&A session?
Yeah, maybe we address, there is a couple of questions, and then, but this second part, what you are saying, I think is absolutely relevant. There was at least one thumbs up, someone reacted. And because we know the community, we have several events also in that direction. So that's also very interesting. There is one question in the chat which says, what about accuracy of the model? What is the difference between ChatGPT that work not in the way we would like?
Okay, that's an interesting point. Okay, the accuracy. I mean, one thing that I omitted, but it's actually very important, is that PandasAI doesn't come up with a model by itself. I mean, we also trained a large language model to work in conjunction with PandasAI, so that's an option. But it also can work with any large language model presence available in the market. So you can work with GPT-4, you can work with every Claude, like Anthropic models. You can work with open source models, local models, so Llama and similar. So it's very flexible from that point of view. Talking about accuracy, this is actually one of the toughest parts because evaluation of large language models has been probably since the early days one of the toughest topics. What we are so the accuracy can really vary, and that's the one of the biggest issues, because in fact how PandasAI works is it generates code similarly to what then code interpreter has also done at some point, and then it executes this code. So there's no way to grant 100% accuracy. That's almost impossible in statistics in general, and in particular in the generative AI space, because it's so not deterministic. However, what we noticed is that we can take advantage of RAG, which is probably every one of you will have heard of it. And so basically, the one slide about the training that I was mentioning is actually indeed meant to boost accuracy. So imagine you can teach the LLM how to behave in 10 different scenarios, and then you use RAG to retrieve the most similar and relevant scenarios, and you pass to the LLM with some kind of in-context learning. So by providing this in-context learning, usually this significantly boosts accuracy. In particular, when the model would otherwise tend to not understand the data that you're passing. It happens very frequently. In some cases, for example, when we have normalized tables. So in normalized tables, you can have like some records that are reproduced over and over, because you're not doing joins, you're not you don't have like several data sets, but like instead you have just one big table that has duplicate records. In that case, based on our experience, ChatGPT does wrong all the time. And if you use the training feature of PandasAI, what you can get is that it learns that it's not indeed a table where one accuracy occurs just once, and it will be able to do the math and behave accordingly and boost accuracy. And that's one of the use cases. The other thing is that we have recently released it's actually in beta, but it's a new model. It's a new agent that it's called the semantic agent, and basically it adds a semantic layer in the middle. So instead of generating the SQL code or instead of generating the Python code, what we do is indeed we generate a semi-structured JSON that we can then parse, and it's this kind of semantic layer query. And then we parse it to generate the SQL code or the Python code, depending on the use case. And then in this case, we really boost accuracy because we kind of provide the LLM with the potential kind of calculations that it can do, the potential kind of aggregations. I don't know if anyone of you is familiar with semantic layers or measures and dimensions, if you are familiar in the BI space, for example. But basically, what you have is, imagine you have like a histogram. You have the X and the Y axis. What we ask to the LLM is to figure out how to get to the X and the Y instead of generating the SQL. Then we build the SQL ourselves. And this usually boosts accuracy like for real a lot. This combined with the train comes with almost 99% of accuracy. But it really depends on the data set. It really depends on how much you train, but you can virtually get to close to 100% accuracy. Yeah.
You mentioned about RAG, and I was wondering also, there was one slide before about PandasAI can learn. So I assume there is a vector database, and right?
Yeah, exactly. That's how the training works. I think train is actually a misleading word, but it's like a representation of what PandasAI does. It's not about fine-tuning a model. It's indeed about using RAG and in-context learning. So we just store on the vector DB, we search with cosine similarity, and then we take it and we pass the most relevant examples as in-context learning, and then we use this in-context learning to to instruct with featured learning the model.
Yeah, and a follow-up to the previous question from the chat. How would you compare PandasAI to ChatGPT, Advanced Data Analysis, or Code Interpreter? And how about Microsoft Copilot for Excel, if that is called that way? I'm not sure. There is also some other startups which are popping up, like Data GPT or SQL AI. So if you could like picture a map, where do you see each thing and what is the space of PandasAI would be great.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I think Excel Copilot is something that cannot be really considered at the moment. In fact, I don't know if any one of you has played around with it, but it's very unlikely to provide you what you asked for. On the other hand, ChatGPT Code Interpreter usually does a good job with one single data set. It tends to do a very good job with one single data set. It's very proactive as a data analyst. It has been trained specifically for that. So you can leverage Code Interpreter, just attach a data set, you just like upload the data set, you do a very naive question or even no question at all, and then you will do a pretty detailed analysis. Sometimes the problem with that is that the assumptions that the model does in trying to understand the data are completely wrong. So the advantage of PandasAI is that you can provide the custom context on how to explore and understand the data. Imagine like what the Code Interpreter does at the end of the day is they just pretty much to some extent they kind of emulated the process of PandasAI. So what was PandasAI doing in the very early days was getting the head of the data set and passing it to the large language model, so that the large language model had enough understanding of how the data was structured. And then we figured that this is not enough. And that's why we added the training, we added the in-context learning, and even in generating the head of the data set, we put in place some mechanism to try to show to the LLM possible edge cases that are not present if you just pick the top 5 rows in the table.
And how do you measure success? So is there a way, a benchmark or something that you use, or do you use like Elo rating, asking few users to try it out and give feedback?
No, that's a great one. There are benchmarks. We have an internal benchmark. We are also building an open source benchmark because, of course, like internal benchmark, unfortunately, is with sensitive data, so we cannot really share the benchmark because it's with some sensitive data sets. So we are now building an open source benchmark with the community, with the support from the community. What we do usually is we write, first of all, we have like this benchmark. We write unit tests to either pass or not based on what the outcome is. It can be that we search specific things in the code, or it can be that we try to get the output and check it out based on similarity or exact match. It can be a combination of these things. And so at the end of the day, what we have is either a test passing or a test failing. And so we can assess, how well a specific large language model works in conjunction with PandasAI, for example.
But still, you need this kind of question and expected answer, right? So you need to craft this manually, or do you have also an LLM generating this kind of synthetic data?
I mean, I think what we are doing is we are doing an open source version of it. So basically, it will be predefined, given certain domains from medical to finance to logistics to all these kind of domains, and we will have like what we are doing is we are setting up 25 questions for each domain with a different level of difficulty, and then we are writing unit tests to just use PandasAI to execute, to do the analysis pretty much, and then assess whether it's correct or not based on the unit test. And at the end of the day, the goal is more to figure out how well each large language model is performing with PandasAI at the moment. So what we can tell based on our internal benchmark is that the state of the art at the moment is GPT-4o, which is better than GPT-4, for example. Even GPT 3.5 works quite well, and even all the new generation of Claude models are very good. Yes, in particular Sonnet and Opus. With open source models, we are seeing a huge improvement. So with Llama 3, we are getting decent results. With Mixtral 8, the mixture of expert, the small mixture of expert of Mixtral, it also works very well. But it's not to the level of closed source models yet. So this is what I can tell based on our benchmarks.
Yeah, there is a follow-up on this question from Andy saying, have you considered LLM as a judge to validate answers?
Yeah, no, that's a great one. What we are implementing the LLM as a judge in the new agent, the semantic agent, but we are not judging the answer from the LLM itself, but indeed we are judging the SQL query of the Python code that we generate ourselves. Because we have seen in some cases that the LLM as judge tends to be biased. Even with GPT-4 is better, but with smaller models, it tends to be biased, and sometimes it just tries to either, depending on how you formulate the prompt, either tends to say no, is not correct and explaining why, or it tends to say that it's always correct because it doesn't want to contradict you, kind of.
Yeah. Okay. There is a question also, and by the way, Andy is very active. Thanks for that. I'm looking now at the Q&A, not only in the chat. Does PandasAI collect any kind of telemetry? So there is a question about data sovereignty and privacy. Where is the data stored and processed, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great one. So PandasAI as a library is entirely like local, so it runs locally. The only thing we pass to the LLM is this kind of head that is synthesized to some extent. So you have like a randomized header. So basically, how it works is we pick 5 random samples for each of the columns, and then we provide to the LLM just to provide enough context. But each item from the column is paired with another item, which makes them meaningless. It can also be passed the custom header so that it's completely synthetic. So you just decide which data is passed to the LLM. It's indeed important to pass some context to the LLM to have it performing better data analysis. In fact, there are a couple of examples that in which it doesn't work well. Imagine like you don't pass this head, and you have a question about which country has the highest GDP, or what is the country where we make the highest revenue, and you have the country column stored with the country code. So if the LLM is not aware that you have this two-letter ISO code, like country code, like IT for Italy and DE for Germany and stuff like that, and instead it is expecting to search for Italy or Germany, it just won't work. So that's why it's very important to provide a few samples to the LLM for it to be aware of that. But as I said, this can be done synthetically. So you pass a custom header if you want, or otherwise it will synthesize to some extent by itself, pairing random elements. But as I said, the actual data set is never passed or shared to the LLM. Everything stays locally on wherever you have the data set.
Okay, there's still one more question. Maybe you already answered partially. How dependent are you or is PandasAI on the underlying technology? Is it your own or based on APIs? For example, OpenAI had an outage today.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, I think why they should feel safe is because it's open source. So you can see the code, you can see what it does under the hood. It's not like black magic. You can really see everything that is being done. So it's very transparent by design. It's open source, everyone can see it. So I think that's the biggest guarantee that you can have. You see the code, you see what's going on. What you cannot see is what happens at the LLM inference level, but unfortunately this is not something we can control. We can just control our process, and this is fully transparent. What happens at the LLM level, I mean, it's still safe to some extent if you think about it, because you decide which data to pass. So if you know exactly, okay, I'm passing these custom headers, this is the only data that will be shared with the LLM. So you can have like a full, it's fully transparent, the whole process. You know which data is shared with whom, and your data stays local. So
yeah, I think this is answering the question from Kirill in the chat, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there was one more question about how dependent are you on the underlying technology. So I think you explained that PandasAI supports Llama 3 and OpenAI. So actually, almost any LLM out there can be connected to PandasAI. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I mean it's for granted. I mean, it relies heavily in large language models, so it doesn't have to stick to one specific large language models. So it can be that, for example, you can implement like a fallback mechanism. So if OpenAI is down for any reason, you can switch to Claude, or if Claude is down, you can switch to your local model or something like that. So even from that point of view, it's very unlikely that all these providers are down at the same time. It can happen, but it's very unlikely, and that there's probably a bigger problem if that happens.
Yeah. So okay, so PandasAI is not dependent on one single LLM. I think that's the answer.
Yeah, not one specific one. Yeah.
Right. There's one more. How about the adaptive or assimilative tendency or behavior of LLMs to agree with the user? I guess it's not an issue with PandasAI, as the LLM is used to create the SQL code to access the data and not do the analysis by itself. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's actually partially correct. Yeah, I would say it's 99% correct. The point is that if you use it as a judge, it's still biased in the way you ask the question. So sometimes, first of all, you have first of all, every step adds complexity to the process. So imagine you want to add an extra request. It means that the analysis is going to take longer, and it's a trade-off, between accuracy and performance. But yeah, I think if you want to use it as a judge, it works for the most naive failures. And in fact, for example, we are using for the so-called error correction framework. So imagine if it generates a code, we try to execute and there is an error, we already use the LLM to fix it. But to use it as a judge, sometimes if we use the same LLM that generated the code, sometimes it just doesn't notice that there is even an error. So it tends to believe that the actual code is correct while it's not. So it's not bulletproof. Even if you do the other LLM as a judge step, it won't be for granted that it will work. That's what I mean.
Okay, there's one curiosity question. Why is it called PandasAI? Why Pandas?
Yeah, that's a great one. So Pandas is probably the most famous library in Python. It's used by data analysts and data scientists and some data engineers. And yeah, it's basically done to, it's basically built for data analysts. So you just have a way to explore your data, you visualize your data. And why PandasAI? Because it was built on the top of that. So we took Pandas and we say, okay, LLMs are great at generating code. Let's generate Pandas code and with AI, so PandasAI, and let's try to execute it and see if we can, beat the junior data analyst, let's say. So that's pretty much the reason why.
Okay, it's good to know that my guess was in the right direction. Maybe I think it's enough for now for the technical questions, and I wonder if you would be so kind to share a little bit on your startup adventure, the accelerator tool, or not tool, the Y Combinator thingy. That would be also very interesting for the community if you can share a little bit on that.
Yeah, sure thing. So basically, when you build so PandasAI kind of exploded all of a sudden. So I launched it on LinkedIn, and in a couple of days it had 1,000 stars. Then a couple of weeks it had 5,000 stars. So you kind of had this boom, and so at some point you start thinking, okay, maybe I built something that people really want and really need, and I started thinking of how I could build a product on top of that, to solve even better some potential problems that some companies might be facing. And so yeah, that's how the startup was born. So out of something that was working by itself, I just decided to start exploring how to build a product. It's always hard when you launch an open source product, because you want to make sure that you can give enough value while at the same time making it sustainable. Because the thing that was actually moving me was I love what I'm doing. I want to do it full time. That was the only thing that mattered. And so you start thinking, okay, how can I make it sustainable? To keep doing what I'm doing while at the same time, making it sustainable. And so in the very early days, I started thinking of potential revenue streams that I could have, had with PandasAI. But at the same time, as I said, the focus was on keeping it open, keeping it at least on the core functionalities, keeping it free for everyone. That was the initial value proposition, and so yeah. So basically, fast forward, we at some point after a couple of, we had already raised a pre-seed in September, and honestly, I think it has been the third time for me applying at Y Combinator. So the first time I got to the interview with another startup that we were running with my co-founder. Then the second time we applied with PandasAI, and it didn't work. So they just rejected us without even interviewing us. And so after the round, I said, yeah, that's the last option. Let's try. But if it doesn't work, we just won't get in, because otherwise it would be just too late, to get into YC. We would be at a later stage, and YC won't be meaningful at all for what we're doing. So we applied, and yeah, it was cool because after 4 days we got an interview scheduled. So we jumped on a call the day after, I guess, and there was this partner. Yeah, I think YC is split in several groups, and you have several partners for each of the groups. And so after this call, we had another call and with another partner. So it was kind of yeah, crazy because usually you just have one call with YC. And after this call, we had a third call where they confirmed that we were in. So that's how it all began. And then in January we moved to SF, San Francisco, and basically yeah, we started this adventure. So this is something amazing. When you are at YC, you can really feel these vibes in the air. Like in particular, San Francisco is the place to be if you want to do something about AI, because it's so many AI startups. Like every AI founder is moving there, and you have so many events. Like every day, you just look at your calendar, and you have like 4 different events, and you have just to choose which one to do. And so yeah, basically, I think it's been super rewarding. I think YC really teaches you how to prioritize things and making things, starting from the most important things, and then just don't consider everything that is noise. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what I can share. I don't know, like if you have any specific questions. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe if you would have some insider information. So what do they search for in Y Combinator? Is it more about the product ideas or about the team or a combination of both things? What do you think?
Yeah, if I have to give a feedback now that I've been in, I think it's either team. So team is the most important thing. So if you have worked at I don't know, Meta AI, and worked on Llama 2 or Llama 3, and you apply to Y Combinator, you can apply with literally every dumb idea, and you're just in, because it's I mean, you have already proved your value. That's one case. The other case is you are doing great in your domain, and you are really have some additional knowledge compared to your competitors. So maybe you're doing something specific in hardware, and you are in the top 1% that knows hardware. Even maybe you just studied at a good university for hardware. That's also enough. In fact, the other thing that is important is university. So if you have attended, I don't know, MIT or Stanford, then chances are very high that you are in, just because you have been through it. As an alternative for every ordinary person like me, what you have to do is to really showcase traction. So it can be in the open source, it can be like just numbers in terms of stars and downloads and things like this. While if you build another kind of business, is usually mostly about revenue. So you have to show that you have some revenue, that you have some good growth, and you know how to make it the next billion company in theory. So these kind of things are super important. So you either have a great background with great university, great companies in your in your CV, or as an alternative, you really have to show that you have already built, you have already done something incredible with either execution in terms of traction or revenue or similar. So
Yeah.
that's what they really value a lot.
Okay, understood. And what to expect for the people who get there and maybe not necessarily to Y Combinator, maybe a smaller accelerator. So it is like 6 months, if I remember right. Uh, what is the
Yeah,
day to day? Do you have like intermediate goals or how does it work?
it's actually 3 months. Was he? And actually, I'm glad it's just 3 months, because 6 months, it's. I mean, they really push you beyond your limits. So these 3 months are the most exciting yet most tiring moments of your life. That's for granted. So basically, yeah, what you do is you have like some, recurring calls with you know um, you are assigned to one general partner. So this is the person that follows you all along like the acceleration period. And then you usually have a weekly call with them, or like a chat with them in person. And then apart from that, actually, you have a couple of events per week. But at the end of the day, it's just you don't have to imagine it as a school or anything like that. It's just you working super hard, and then being mentored by really amazing people that have been through it, maybe 5 years back or 10 years back. So it's not a school. It's more about mentoring and working super hard and trying to really reach the goal that you didn't even imagine you could have achieved.
There's two more questions. One is a little bit coming back to PandasAI. Do you have already a defined business model, and how does it look like?
Okay, for us, the business model. Okay, there's so the business model is a little bit more complicated when you are like a open source startup, because of course you can start closed sourcing things, and or as an alternative you have to license the part or the whole product. So in our case, the business model at the moment is mostly about building on the top of the library. So we have the library, and we are building a SaaS on the top of that. So we can have like the library being like the most important piece of software on top of which we build. In our case, it's a sort of you have to imagine like a BI tools. If you're familiar with Power BI or similar, the limitation of Power BI, like in terms of like as an end user, it's really frustrating sometimes to deal with with Power BI. So what we are doing is we are building a BI platform that is accessible to everyone. To no matter your background, no matter if you are deep into data or not, we want to make it accessible to product managers, top executives that want to just do data exploration and get visualization done in a couple of seconds instead of weeks. Or sometimes with a data team it can take forever, because they are really stressed out. They're really under pressure, because of so many incoming requests. So we kind of disintermediate all the easy tasks that can be done by PandasAI, for example. So this is the business model, pretty much. In other cases, when you join YC, you don't even need that business model, if this is the question. I mean, you need like a long-term vision. You need to know how you will make money, but it doesn't have to be proven yet. It can also be like a crazy idea if you believe, and you can make them believe that you are the one that will make it.
All right, there is no more questions yet, because you answered also the other question I had here. There was a request if it would be fine for the last few minutes to enable the microphone. I think some people want to speak up. Let's try it out. How to do this, not one by one. So I will allow mic for attendees, allow mics, and allow camera for attendees, allow cameras. So now I think everyone should be able to, exactly, Mike, we can see you.
Turn them off.
So do you want to make a question or make a comment, Martin, Mike, or anyone else? Now I got you surprised now.
Yeah, I asked most of mine, I think. I just think it's super excited, and I missed the first bit because I was dishing dinner up for the kids, but I was interested. I didn't realize that it was kind of separate from the Pandas Python library, so it took me a little while to twig, but yeah, I have been using that as well. But I'm interested in from that point of view where you can have a conversation with your data, and I've seen people, my peers, have done proof of concept, but it was with Google Cloud, I think. But that's ultimately where I want to get to, is you can, if the data is sensible enough, just ask it natural language questions. But my concern there is, I've done some experimenting with RAG, as Mike knows, and I got some crazy hallucinations. So what's the level of trust and confidence when you ask a question that you're not going to get nonsense back?
That's a good one. Actually, I think if you just, I mean, it really depends on the data set. So if your data set is clean enough and you have prepared in the right way, then the confidence is very high. In some other cases, if you have very raw data that you just, pass the raw production DB with the very poorly named columns. Sometimes I've seen revenue 1, revenue 2, revenue whatever, and then it's very hard if you ask a question about the revenue to actually get some meaningful answers. So that's one thing. The other thing is that we also have added this in context learning, so you can pass some samples to help the large language model to understand better how to analyze data and how that specific data set works. So this also boosts accuracy significantly. And then the third thing we are launching now is this semantic layer in the middle. So instead of actually generating every kind of Python code, we just generate a very specific query, semi-structured. So it's just a JSON, which highlights the measures and the dimensions and some other settings that are needed then to filter data and stuff like that. And then with that, it's a lot more high accuracy, because it's just about predicting what are the measures. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but like for example, when you build a histogram, you have the x and the y axis, and the one is the measure and the other one is the dimension, right? So the measure kind of represents how you group by, and the dimension is the relevant information that you want to get for these groups. So by doing that, you can get high quality and highly accurate representations, so visualizations, for example, and also subset of group data, aggregated data, and even joins, for example. Because, for example, the good part is you don't have to rely on the large language model to join the different tables, because you have already told the large language model how to join them. And so it's just about generating this query, and then it will be the semantic layer doing the magic under the hood. So this kind of combination of things, then you can also use the semantic layer and the training within context learning, and then you will get even more highly accurate results. So the answer is it depends, but if you do things right, you can get to very high accuracy.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And a follow-up question around the testing as well. So I come from the traditional software development lifecycle point of view. And a bit of a broad question, but is it a thing where you can seed your own database with like control data so that you can run unit tests? So if you have like a structured set of questions that should always return the right kind of data, is that a pattern that's viable in this approach?
Yeah, 100%. You can have flaky tests if you do like this, because unfortunately, large language models are not deterministic all the time. But if you really, want to enforce that, you can in theory. We use this approach mostly for benchmarking purposes, as opposed to being 100% sure that this test will pass, because sometimes you also have flaky tests with traditional software. So with large language models, it's even more likely to happen. But you can still have like monitor regression. So imagine you have like a benchmark scoring, I don't know, 89%, and then you have a significant regression with one change that you do, and it's now 79%. You can try to assess things like this. That's what we do, at least.
Yeah, super. Thank
All right.
you.
We will need to stop here because of the time. Again, thank you so much to Gabriele and all the wonderful questions. Just to remind again the community, we are meeting in 2 weeks on June 17th, so don't miss the community call. And end of June, 27th of June, we will have this talk about the legal aspects when using GenAI technologies. And with this, we close for today. Thank you so much, Gabriele, and everyone else. Have a good day. Have a good evening.
Great.
And bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.